Hola amigos. So I know some of you, after seeing my post about Conversation Circle, you were interested in how I facilitate such an activity in my class. And actually, I was planning on doing a little bit of Conversation Circle today, but we ended up doing a listening task and just like a very brief form of Conversation Circle. So I am going to, we do have another one planned in the next few weeks. So I want to make sure that I just give like the full context, but I'm making this video right now just to give you some examples of what I've done with Conversation Circle and how I've engaged students. So the first step to having a successful Conversation Circle is making sure that we outline the expectations for what we want that to look like in our classroom. And so one of the things that I do is I talk to students about the level of questions that I want, and since I am doing Conversation Circle with my level 4 students now, we've basically eliminated all very basic levels of questioning. So I want them to ask questions that promote higher order thinking and questions that also can drive the conversation. And so some examples are questions beginning with why, por qué, questions prefaced with to what extent, and even just giving background, prefacing or even setting up the questions so that other students are able to get a full sense of what's being asked, but also answering a more higher level question. The next step that I do is I often like to, I like to do a lot of examples and models. So as we were watching El Internado, I would let them view about 5 to 10 minutes and then just come up with some questions. And I didn't give them a lot. I mean, just basically setting up that expectation. I didn't go too much in depth of kind of what I wanted, because part of modeling to them is that we can show them and we can give them examples, but until they actually experience it for themselves, sometimes they're not going to really grasp the idea or the concept. And so after setting the expectations, I normally allow them to view something. So if it's with El Internado, we're viewing like 5 or 10 minutes, or if it's with a text, we're reading a little bit, and then I have them come up with their questions. And inevitably, there are students that come up with those low-level questions. So what I normally do is we workshop those questions. So we'll put a question on the board, and I don't necessarily tell them this is a low-level question. I sort of push them to like expanding on a question and maybe transforming it into a higher level question. And so that's something that they can do in groups, they can do individually, they can do in pairs, but it gives them the ability to see sort of like this, see their questioning techniques in 3D, and it really really helps. And then after that, we'll watch, and then they'll come up with their questions. Another tool or another technique that I usually employ as well is, we can put all the questions on the board. And I've done this with my Frida Kahlo unit. I'm not doing that unit this year, but I've done it in the past where I have the students submit questions. We'll order the questions on the board, and then they actually assign a number to the question. So number 1 is if it's like a very low level question, number 2 if it's intermediate, or if it's a complex question, and number 3 is it a discussion, if it's a very provocative question or a debatable question. So those are just some activities and techniques that I do, and it really comes down to working with the students and preparing them and giving them the tools. And that's one of the reasons why I think that the Conversation Circles have this year been such a success in my class, because it's not the circle in and of itself, but it's just all the preparation and scaffolding that goes into it. And again, these are transfer skills. These are skills that students are working in their other classes. We just want to sort of open the door to give them the ability and sort of that gateway so they can use those skills in our classes as well. So I hope this has been helpful, and I promise that once we start with our Conversation Circles again in level 4, I didn't want it to be artificial. I could have, had students redo our Conversation Circle from last week, but then that would have been artificial. So I really want to make sure that when I do put up a video about this this method of questioning, that it's something that's very unique. It's something that's very authentic, so that you can kind of see like how it goes in class. And maybe there are going to be some good questions, there are going to be some questions that need a little bit of work, but at least you get to see sort of like the real deal. So stay tuned and look for my video on conversation circle in the near future. Gracias, and I hope this has been helpful.